Houska Castle, perched ominously in the dense forests of the Czech Republic, is unlike any other castle in Europe. It wasn't built to defend or shelter a royal family, no grand hallways or courtly chambers. In fact, Houska was constructed with one terrifying purpose: to keep something from getting out. Beneath the castle lies a deep, dark pit, known by locals as the Gateway to Hell. For centuries, the pit has been the source of nightmarish rumours. When it was discovered, it was said to be so deep that no one could see the bottom. Horrified villagers claimed that strange demonic creatures would crawl out from its depths, attacking livestock and wandering the forests at night. The castle, with its chapel directly over the hole, was built to seal whatever lurked beneath. In the late 1930s, when Nazi forces occupied Czechoslovakia, they commandeered the castle, but not for military operations. Houska became a site for occult experiments, led by the infamous SS officer Karl Hermann Frank. According to declassified reports and local accounts, prisoners were brought to the castle and used in terrifying rituals to summon what lay dormant below. One particularly harrowing account comes from a survivor named Thomas Novak, a local villager who had been conscripted to work for the Nazis. Thomas later described a chilling night where he witnessed SS officers lower a prisoner into the pit, only a few meters down on a rope. Moments after the man disappeared into the blackness, his screams echoed throughout the castle. But they weren't human. They were twisted, guttural, as though something else had taken hold of him. They pulled him back up, but what came out of the pit was not the man they had lowered in. His eyes had turned black and his face was contorted into a grimace of pure terror. The officers, hardened men who had seen death on battlefields, ran from the room. Later, Thomas and others found the man's body abandoned outside the castle walls, his entire body drained of blood, yet there were no visible wounds. Imagine being in Thomas's shoes, a simple villager, thrust into the heart of evil. The sounds he heard that night, the way the darkness seemed to breathe and shift around the castle, haunted him for the rest of his life. He could never erase the screams, nor the empty, hollow look in that man's blackened eyes. Years later, Thomas confessed to his granddaughter the darkness. It's still there. I feel it every time the wind blows from the forest. I see it in my dreams. He passed away soon after, his sleep plagued by nightmares of being dragged down into that pit. Houska Castle still stands, silent and cold. Visitors say they hear whispers near the chapel, and some have seen shadowy figures moving in the courtyard. Locals warn not to linger near the gates at night, for the pit may still be hungry, waiting for its next sacrifice. Wadi Qelt, a barren and unforgiving valley in the Judean Desert, stretches between Jerusalem and Jericho. The harsh landscape is dotted with ancient monasteries, caves and ruins, some dating back thousands of years. But hidden among these rocks is a dark secret, one that even the local Bedouins rarely speak of. For centuries, travelers through the desert have reported hearing the sound of a woman's wail echoing across the canyon at night. Some say it's the wind, others believe it's something far more sinister, the restless spirit of a woman betrayed whose agony still resonates through the sands of time. In 1947, a British archaeologist named Evelyn Marsh led an expedition to the Wadi Qelt region. They were searching for ancient artifacts, drawn by rumours of an undiscovered temple buried deep within the desert. The team included several locals, one of whom was a Bedouin guide named Hassan. From the very beginning, Hassan was reluctant, warning Evelyn of a curse upon the land, but she dismissed his concerns. One night, as the team set up camp near a narrow canyon, Evelyn heard a distant cry, like a woman screaming in the distance. It was faint, but unmistakable. She assumed it was an animal or perhaps the wind cutting through the jagged rocks. But then she saw something. A figure, a woman dressed in white, standing at the edge of a cliff, her long black hair flowing in the wind. When Evelyn called out, the figure disappeared. The next morning, Hassan, visibly shaken, told Evelyn about the legend of Zahra, a Bedouin woman from the late 1800s. Zahra had fallen in love with a travelling merchant who promised to take her away from her harsh life in the desert. But after many months of secret meetings, he abandoned her without warning, leaving her to wander the desert in despair. She was never seen again, but her cries were said to haunt the canyon. Determined to find out more, Evelyn convinced the team to explore deeper into the canyon. That night, they were awakened by the same eerie wailing, this time louder and closer. Evelyn and Hassan ventured out of the camp, following the sound. As they reached a narrow crevice, the cries became deafening, and they saw her again. The woman in white, this time much closer. Her face was pale, her eyes empty, as if she had been wandering the desert for centuries. In a panic, Hassan fled, but Evelyn stood frozen as the woman slowly approached. Zahra's voice seemed to surround her, not through words, but through pure, unrelenting sorrow. As the apparition reached out to touch her, Evelyn collapsed. When Evelyn woke up, she was back in camp, her team around her. She was shaking uncontrollably, her mind filled with Zahra's despair. That night changed her forever. She couldn't sleep without hearing the woman's cries, and she abandoned archaeology altogether, convinced that Zahra's spirit had latched onto her, dragging her into the same emotional abyss. Evelyn spent the rest of her life trying to make sense of that night. In her journals, she wrote, "The desert holds its dead close. I don't know if I saw a ghost or if I became a part of her suffering, but I can't escape it." To this day, locals say that if you wander the Wadi Qelt at night, you can still hear Zahra's cries carried by the wind. Some who have ventured too far into the canyon have disappeared, swallowed by the desert, never to be seen again. Perhaps Zahra still roams the valleys, searching for someone to share her endless torment. These stories remind us that no matter how far we've come in our understanding of the world, there are places, moments, and events that defy explanation. Whether it's a pit to hell buried under an ancient castle or the restless cries of a spirit wandering the desert, the unknown still holds us in its cold, unrelenting grip. Sleep well, if you can.